Emo did not begin with Dashboard Confessional, but with his DC project, Chris Carrabba sure took it in a new and exciting direction. The Rites of Spring and Dag Nasty had been doing that whole emotional hardcore thing as early as 1985. And throughout the 1990s, the likes of Sunny Day Real Estate, Braid, Far, and the Get Up Kids were showing what was possible when rock bands turned those feels up to 11. But by the new millennium, fans were in search of something new, something more intimate, a new connection between artist and audience. This was Dashboard Confessional's whole deal. And by 2000, what had begun as a solo side project for Chris Carrabba of Further Seems Forever was rapidly turning into something else entirely. This is the story of how emo evolved, how a new, stripped-back version of the genre emerged, and how Dashboard Confessional led an unplugged revolution. Florida, 1998, and the Sunshine State is home to some of the most exciting hardcore bands in the country. But one of the undisputed heavyweights of the scene, Strongarm, is reaching the end of the road. Across a blistering 5-year career, Strongarm had become known for their mix of thoughtful introspection and righteous anger, wrapped up in punishing breakdowns and metal-inspired melodies. Now, the group was heading in a new direction. Guitarist Josh Colbert and Nick Dominguez, bass player Chad Neptune, and drummer Steve Klaseth took the smart, emotional engagement of Strongarm and tempered it with a softer, mellower sound. The transition from Strongarm to Further Seems Forever wasn't some crash-and-burn implosion. It was fully amicable. In fact, FSF was very nearly just Strongarm 2.0. Same dudes, same ethos, but with a new sound and a new approach. But when vocalist Chris Carrabba politely declined the invite to join the group, his old bandmates found themselves in search of a singer. Enter Chris Carrabba. The former Vacant Andes and one-time Newfound Glory guitarist was the missing piece of the puzzle, adding his own distinctive vocals to those chugging guitars and glistening memories. And that could have been the end of the story. But life is rarely as neat and tidy as all that. It was never going to be happily ever after for Chris Carrabba and Further Seems Forever. While the band worked on writing their debut LP, The Moon Is Down, Carrabba was making moves on his own project, a solo venture called Dashboard Confessional. Working quickly and brimming with ideas, Carrabba wrote, recorded, and even toured the first Dashboard album, entitled The Swiss Army Romance. By August 2000, Carrabba knew this whole setup just wasn't working out. While his FSF bandmates juggled day jobs with a blossoming music career, The Swiss Army Romance was flying off the shelves. That same month, Carrabba announced his departure from Further Seems Forever. There were no hard feelings, and the vocalist returned temporarily that September to help FSF record their debut. Meanwhile, indie label Fiddler Records, run by the 21-year-old Amy Fleischer, just couldn't keep up with the demand for Dashboard's debut. Fleischer licensed the album to Drive-Thru Records, who released their own version that November. The project had begun as a cool artistic outlet on the side, but now it was Chris Carrabba's main focus. With Dashboard Confessional ready for album number 2, Carrabba found himself at the center of a bidding war. On one side was Drive-Thru, eager to follow up the success of the first record. On the other, Vagrant Records, home to the likes of Alkaline Trio and Saves the Day, and the new employer of Fiddler's Amy Fleischer. Carrabba stuck with Fleischer, and on March 20th, 2001, Vagrant released the second Dashboard Confessional record, The Places You Have Come to Fear the Most. The album eventually went gold in the US and features one of DC's best-loved tracks, Screaming Infidelities. Still ranking highly on lists of best emo tracks of all time to this day, Screaming Infidelities really showcased what Carrabba and Dashboard Confessional were all about. So what was it about Chris Carrabba and Dashboard Confessional that was causing such a sensation? After all, plenty of musicians had gone solo before. A whole load of talented artists had released more personal, more introspective records. Why was this any different? To understand the impact Dashboard Confessional was having on the emo scene in those first years of the new millennium, we've got to look at the live shows. From the very beginning, Carrabba understood the importance of connection, a profound link between artist and audience. Live performance was always going to be a huge part of that. Even before the bidding war blew up between Vagrant and Drive-Thru, Carrabba had taken his DC project out on the road. He was already a known face on the Florida punk scene, so getting on bills wasn't a problem. But winning over audiences? Now that was a little more difficult. Kids who had come along to mosh suddenly found themselves staring up at one guy and an acoustic guitar on the stage. The atmosphere wasn't always the most receptive. but Carrabba generally won those tough crowds over. Maybe won them over is selling it a bit short. He was taking kids who didn't quite know what to make of the whole thing and turning them into lifelong DC fans. Often, this came down to the genuine honesty and sincerity in Dashboard Confessional's music and in Chris Carrabba's performances. If you went to any Dashboard show from the early 2000s onwards, you'd witness the power of connecting with an audience in action. Fans singing back every word, feeling every word. Chris Carrabba and his bandmates could make fans feel like those songs were just for them. Live shows became intimate experiences, almost confessionals themselves. This is not to say other emo bands weren't sincere. They sure as hell were. It's just that Dashboard Confessional was stripping away a lot of the noise, a lot of the armor that separated musician from audience, and just letting those tunes be. So whether it was one guy on a stage with an acoustic or 4 guys playing in a full band, Dashboard Confessional shows were different. The tunes weren't washed out by fuzz and feedback. They were softer, more considered, giving the lyrics the space to breathe without losing any of that visceral emotional power. For anyone who hadn't had the chance to see Dashboard Confessional live yet, 2002's MTV Unplugged offered a glimpse of just what was going on. Clocking in at 52.5 minutes and accompanied by a DVD release, MTV Unplugged saw Chris Carrabba backed by bandmates John Leffler, Dan Bonebrake, and Mike Marsh, adding a new twist to tracks that had already become fan favorites. Surrounded by fans who know every word of the band's songs, Dashboard Confessional lay down a lush soundscape of acoustic strings and piano keys. With Chris Carrabba's vocals over the top, strong and distinctive but still emotional and vulnerable in places, the set was a haunting example of just what was possible from the emo genre. Just like with Nirvana several years before, Dashboard Confessional's entry into the MTV Unplugged series became a seminal release. By now, Dashboard Confessional was achieving real crossover appeal. In 2003, the third album, A Mark, A Mission, A Brand, A Scar, proved to be the project's biggest commercial hit to date, as well as Vagrant's best-selling record. The tour with Brand New that fall blew the emo genre wide open. With Chris Carrabba's stripped-back, often heartbreakingly raw songwriting, and Brand New's pivot away from pop-punk into darker territory off the back of Déjà Entendu, audiences were treated to thrilling, cathartic sets. The following summer, Dashboard Confessional's broader appeal was confirmed by an appearance on the Spider-Man 2 soundtrack. Vindicated, which featured over the movie's end credits, demonstrated just how far emo had come. No longer the preserve of sweaty hardcore dudes showing off their sensitive side. This was now something everyone could enjoy. But anyone buying those first pressings of A Mark and hoping to hear hit single Vindicated was going to be sorely disappointed. Instead, they'd have to wait until the deluxe version of follow-up record Dusk and Summer. In 2006, Dashboard Confessional released their 4th full-length, Dusk and Summer. The new record added more layers to Dashboard's signature sound, with lush backing tracks and electronic elements, but retained that emotive power. More tours with Brand New and Say Anything put Dashboard Confessional in front of some of their biggest audiences to date, while Chris and the group went back to their acoustic roots for 5th album, The Shade of Poison Trees, in 2007. They were still playing arenas and connecting with huge crowds. With a 6th album, Alter the Ending, released in 2009, Dashboard hit what was probably the peak of their mainstream appeal. A tour with Newfound Glory may not have won them any new fans, but opening for Bon Jovi definitely did. As did a track on the Jennifer's Body soundtrack. Never mind emo royalty, Dashboard Confessional had become fully fledged rock royalty. Like I said, emo didn't start with Dashboard Confessional, and Chris Carrabba certainly wasn't the first frontman to go solo. But with DC, Carrabba was able to do something different. He set the ball rolling on a new style of emo, in which the quality of the songwriting and the sincerity of the emotion was front and center. Chuck Reagan from Hot Water Music would follow in Chris Carrabba's footsteps, creating stripped-back, heartfelt music that put audience connection first. Ace Enders of the early November did the same, as did Dallas Green of Alexis on Fire. And from first to last, Sonny Moore. Okay, maybe that last one's a bit different, but you get the picture. With Dashboard Confessional's blueprint, bands and artists found themselves free to do whatever the hell they wanted, and explore new avenues with their work. Avenues that were frequently personal, cathartic, and unmistakably human. The Dashboard Confessional project is still rolling on strong. A new record in 2022 gave long-term fans some fresh material to enjoy, and a whole new generation are now discovering those early records, 2 decades down the line. Carrabba has also released records under his own name. Covered in the Flood featured 10 tracks from artists who influenced Dashboard's development. From Justin Townes Earle to John Prine, and from Dandy Warhols to R.E.M., It's a diverse track listing and a real insight into the mind of one of emo's best-loved artists. But Carrabba has put in his own hard yards. He's not just a starry-eyed emo kid looking up at his heroes anymore. For so many, he is the hero. When this generation of singer-songwriters releases compilations of their own influences, don't bet against tracks like Hands Down and Screaming Infidelities making the cut. From the beginning, Chris Carrabba knew he wanted to commit fully to a music career. As Further Seems Forever balanced band life with life, Carrabba remembered saying, "If we're gonna be a band, let's be a band. This is gonna happen by itself." 25 years on, it's pretty clear he made the right call. Thanks for joining me on this exploration of Dashboard Confessional, pioneers of a new, stripped-back form of emo. Let us know in the comments who else you'd like to see us cover on the channel. And while you're here, why not check out another of our deep dives into the universe of pop-punk? Don't forget to like and subscribe, and join me back here next time for more in-depth explorations.